this. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. I hope everybody has come on into the room and we can get started. It's 5:30, so we're going to kick this off. I'm Steve Blank. I'm the Principal Gifts Officer for the California Rangeland Trust, and I'll be your MC and moderator tonight. We've got a great turnout, I think, this evening, but what we're going to ask everybody to do is if you can click in the chat box at the very bottom of your screen, just type in your name. We want to see who's here and who's joined us tonight. Would love to know who's with us. Anyone? Anybody out there? There we go. All right. Welcome, everybody. Glad to see everybody here. Okay, cool. All right, good to know that people are out there. If you haven't already figured out, unfortunately, due to the webinar format, we can't hear you. So chat is going to be your best way to interact with us. It's also going to be beside the chat box, you'll also see a thing for Q&A. And if you want to ask questions of Elizabeth or Michael or any of the people, that's where you'll ask your questions. We are going to hold questions till the end of the presentations, but there will be a Q&A session, but you can ask them at any time, and just so you don't forget them. So just a little background. Since the pandemic began, we've been looking for opportunities to connect with all of you. And one of the ways we came up with is this CEO speaker series. And so it's just a great way to keep in touch. And we're trying to get people who are connected to CRT and to our mission. And so I'm extremely grateful to Al Jahns for agreeing to host tonight, and to Elizabeth Austin for being our featured presenter. As I already mentioned, chat box, make sure you type your names in. Q&A if you guys have questions. If you haven't already, I'll give you one quick second to run to the kitchen and get your favorite adult beverage and a snack. We want this to be fun. We want this to be casual. Pre-pandemic, we would have done this live in somebody's living room, and everybody would be sitting on the couches and on the arms of the couches and in comfy chairs and with a glass of wine or a soda in hand. So make this fun, make it interactive. That's the whole point of this. It's our opportunity to connect. So you guys did not come to hear me speak. So let me kick off our CEO Speakers Series for tonight by introducing the CEO of the California Rangeland Trust, Michael Delbar. Michael, take it away.
Well, thanks, Steve, and welcome everybody. Like Steve said, we're hoping to be able to do these in person, and we will get back to those days soon, hopefully. But in the meantime, thanks for being part of our living room tonight as well. Before we begin, please join me in giving our thoughts to those who are impacted by the wildfires throughout the state, particularly in the North State. Those are just absolutely devastating, and it really emphasizes the importance of what we do and the work we do and our landowner partners in preparing for these types of events. But please join us in thinking about all those impacted by these fires. So the California Rangeland Trust was founded in 1998 by a forward-looking group of ranchers to meet the unique needs of those with these working ranches. The interest by ranchers to permanently protect their lands was strong, but there was no organization that really understood the ranching business. So the California Cattlemen's Association kicked off the California Rangeland Trust on the thought that there might be a few folks out there that would want to do this through the use of a conservation easement. Fast forward 23 years later, with 84 working ranches and 345,000 acres forever protected, the California Rangeland Trust has become the largest California agricultural land trust. Our mission is pretty simple. It's to serve California's land, people, and wildlife by conserving its working rangelands. That service means partnerships, especially with our landowners. And that relationship is why we've become so successful. And that's evidenced by an active list of over an additional 200,000 acres. These are applications that have come in. They've been vetted they represent landowners that want to protect these lands, and they're just waiting for the funding to be available so we can permanently protect them. We talk about the importance of the work the Rangeland Trust does, but we've always kind of struggled to put that in terms that people can understand. We know that the work that our landowner partners do and that the work that we do to help them protect these lands is important, but how important? So when we talk to policymakers or others and try to explain that, we just say it's really, really important, but we had no way to really put that in terms that people can relate to. So we recently commissioned a study with UC Berkeley with Dr. Lynn Hunsinger and her team to help us understand a way to put that in those terms. And so they looked at the impact on the ecosystem services that provided by these rangelands. They took 306,000 acres out of our portfolio, so not our entire portfolio, and monetized those ecosystem and environmental benefits provided by these working lands. And what they found is for those 306,000 acres throughout California, the annual return to folks in California was $1.44 billion with a B. That is incredible. So now when we talk to policymakers and others about the importance of this work, when we put that number out there, they can go, wow, that really is vital and very important. That study also determined that the return on investment of the dollars going into these lands to protect them was $3.47 for every dollar invested. I don't know about you, but if I can get a 350% return on an investment, I'd take that any day. Harriet Burgess also recognized the immense value of protecting these lands, and that's how we came to work together. Elizabeth's husband, Russell Austin, has been a trusted legal source for the Rangeland Trust and has worked with us on the Hearst Ranch project. Also an integral part of our legal counsel is Al Jahns. Russell and Al were the Rangeland Trust 2019 and 2020, respectively, Rangeland Conservation Impact Awardees. This award recognizes individuals who have made significant impact on rangeland conservation in California. And these two individuals are clearly so well deserving of this honor. So it is so important and so gratifying to us tonight to be able to have Al as our host, and then Russell and Russell's wife, Elizabeth, and the book that she is going to talk to us about tonight. So with that, I would like to introduce Al, who's our host for the evening.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. And again, welcome to all joining us for this presentation in the California Rangeland Trust Speaker Series. We're delighted that you have opted to take this break from the Olympics in Tokyo to join us tonight. Our guest speaker and author is Elizabeth Austin, who has written a very engaging exploration of the American champion of land conservation, Harriet Burgess. In Grand Canyon to Hearst Ranch, Elizabeth has captured Harriet's passion, commitment to protecting very special parts of our American landscape, from places ranging from California to north to Alaska and east to the Mississippi River Valley, and of course the Grand Canyon in between. If you have already read Grand Canyon to Hearst Ranch, you can take this opportunity to learn more about its backstory and the insights that Elizabeth has brought to bear. If you have not read the book, I think that tonight's presentation will certainly whet your appetite to do so. Let me first provide you with some information about the author. Elizabeth Austin has, in her own words, always been fascinated by how we discover, tell, interpret, and use the story of our past. She studied British history as an undergraduate at the University of California, go Bears, and as an exchange student in the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. When she continued her formal education in history with a master's degree from the California State University, Sacramento, she shifted her emphasis to public history and had the opportunity to turn her thesis into a book published by the Berkeley Public Policy Press. Now in its second edition, that first book convinced her that she wanted to research and write history that was both based on meticulous research and also compelling to read. And so she supplemented her background in academic history with workshops in creative nonfiction that were the genesis of her imaginative approach to telling a true story in Grand Canyon to Hearst Ranch. And I'm pleased to announce that she was recently honored by the organization Women Writing the West as a finalist in the creative nonfiction category for the 2021 Willa Literary Awards competition. When not researching and writing, Elizabeth likes to travel to new places with her husband, Russell, and usually explores them on foot. Whether hiking the highlands of Scotland or the trails of Point Reyes National Park, she prefers to immerse herself in the unique nature of each place that moving slowly by foot allows. Elizabeth also spends time with her dressage horse and takes long walks with her dog. Russell and she live in Sacramento, California, and have 2 sons and 3 grandsons. I'm sensing a strong male gene there. And now on to the Grand Canyon to Hearst Ranch. In this work, Elizabeth has taken a truly imaginative approach to telling a true story. Her insights into the life and conservation achievements of Harriet Burgess are founded on careful and comprehensive research, but she's flavored that scholarship with personal appreciation and insight into the spirit of Harriet Burgess, derived, I think, in significant in part from her retracing Harriet's baptism into conservation through the passage by Wooden Dory in the rapids of the Colorado River. I'm not certain whether Elizabeth's inspiration for the structure of her book came before or after her own journey down the Colorado River, but I am certain that the book benefits from her juxtaposition of those interludes of her family's experience on the river with her portrayal of Harriet Burgess. And her book clearly benefits also from the behind the scenes insights derived into Harriet's work from her husband's Russell, who served as Harriet's primary legal counsel from the early 90s until Harriet's retirement from ALC in 2005. For my own part, I came to reading Grand Canyon to Hearst Ranch also with an insider's perspective. I worked with Russell, a colleague of now more than 30 years, on many ALC conservation transactions. I slogged through the thorny Devil's Club underbrush of Sitka spruce forest land in Afognak Island with Harriet as she cased yet another adventuresome conservation effort. Certainly my most rewarding experience was to be able to work with both the American Land Conservancy and California Rangeland Trust in the efforts that resulted in the conservation of the Hearst Ranch. And it's with that insider's perspective that I provide my own personal assessment that Elizabeth has written a thoroughly engaging, well-grounded, and insightful work of appreciation of a truly important personality in the annals of land conservation in America. And for that, I say, well done, Elizabeth, and thank you for the read. As a final note, I want to recall a remark that I made at a dinner honoring Harriet Burgess shortly following her retirement from American Land Conservancy. On that occasion, I told her that she had been, for me, the client equivalent of an e-coupon ride in Disneyland. I think that everyone who reads Grand Rapids to Hearst Ranch will readily appreciate my sentiment, although some of the younger among you may have to Google e-coupon to understand the comparison. But on that note, I welcome Elizabeth Austin, tonight's featured speaker, and say, take it away.
Thank you very much, Al and Steve and Michael, and thanks to everyone for joining us this evening. It's great to see you all, if only virtually, and I've been having a wonderful time seeing all the names flash up in the chat box. I wish I could see you all in person, but this is as close as we can get for right now. And I'm going to do a little screen share here. While some of you knew Harriet Hunt Burgess, I hope all of you will discover or perhaps rediscover her and her work in my book, Grand Canyon to Hearst Ranch. Harriet was a dynamic, relentless, risk-taking advocate for the only earth we will ever have. As she once said to a congressional committee, I am here to speak for the earth because it cannot speak for itself. She was both a force of and a force for nature. The Grand Canyon was the catalyst for Harriet's conservation mission and the spark for my book. Harriet made over 20 pilgrimages to the Grand Canyon. It was both her refuge and her inspiration. To help me understand her and her passion for conservation, I had to go to the Grand Canyon. Not just to look over the rim into its cavernous depths, but to experience the canyon in the same way she did. I had to hike in the Grand Canyon. I had to run the rapids of the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. I had to camp on the banks of the Colorado River as it roars and churns its way through the Grand Canyon. So to give you a little taste of our adventure in the Grand Canyon, I'll read a few excerpts from my book, interspersed with a few comments and some photographs. I am not Harriet. This is so not me. I am in the Grand Canyon with my husband, Russell, and our son, Michael. Russell and I lie sweltering in our tent on unopened sleeping bags, spread on thin yellow foam pads, hoping for sleep. Nearby in his tent, Michael already is sound asleep. We had started our trip early that morning, leaving at about 5:30 in the morning to hike down into the canyon. And in this photo, you see Michael in the foreground and the switchbacks of the trail as they go down into the canyon. There's Russell getting closer to the end of our long hike, and the both of us approaching the span that goes across the Colorado River to Phantom Ranch, where we were going to meet the group that was going to take us down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon.
Elizabeth, let me interrupt you for 1 second. For some reason, we're not seeing your screen.
Oh no, yes, it says I'm screen sharing.
We're not seeing your PowerPoint.
You're not seeing it at all? Because
Not
I
seeing
have
the slides advancing.
it says you are screen sharing and I have a stop share. You want me to stop and start it again?
Yeah, why don't you try that? I'm sorry. But I want to make sure people are seeing what you're talking about.
Yeah, because I've shown quite a few actually. All right, so let's try this again. I'm sharing screen. And you see that?
Yes. Now try advancing that.
Okay, well, actually,
Okay.
So you haven't seen
Perfect.
anything?
Okay, we're good.
Okay,
We're
but you
good.
didn't see
Sorry.
anything up until that point.
Continue.
Okay, all right. Well, you missed some slides of our hike down. You heard me talk about them anyway. So I have survived the almost 10-mile hike down Bright Angel Trail from the South Rim to the Colorado River, carrying my backpack. I have been indoctrinated in the ways of life on the Colorado River. I have met the river guides, the baggage raft crews, and the 13 other people making the journey with us. I have run my first rapid in a small wooden boat called a dory. And that is a dory. It is about 16 feet long, 6 feet wide at its widest point. It holds 4 passengers, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and a boatman who sits in the middle and is chief in charge of the boat. And while there are women as well as men now, although there weren't originally, who do the rowing, they're all called boatmen. The whole idea of going down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon in a dory started with Harriet Hunt Burgess, founder and president of the American Land Conservancy, ALC, and a client of my attorney husband. And there is Harriet on one of her many adventures in the Grand Canyon. At 57 years old, I am going to camp for the first time in my life. And there's the tent where we spent the next 10 days at night sleep. I am going to risk my life in monstrous rapids. I am going to scramble on rocks up narrow canyons. And I'm wondering why I ever thought I should go on this trip. I'm wondering why I didn't back out before it was too late. How is it that the trip that sounded like a fabulous adventure 7 months ago now seems like a big mistake? Harriet was here for the first time 38 years before. Her enthusiasm for running rapids and conserving land was fanned into a burning passion by her first trip down the Grand Canyon in 1973. And this photo is Harriet in 1973 in the Grand Canyon. It was taken by John Blaustein, a renowned photographer of the Grand Canyon, who has published a fabulous book with photos of the Grand Canyon called The Hidden Canyon. It's now in its 3rd edition, with an introduction by Martin Litton and a journal by Edward Abbey. So if you want more photos of the Grand Canyon, that's a great place to find them. Martin Litton was the key to Harriet's passion, finding her passion. She went with him down the Grand Canyon on the Colorado River the first trip. He was an uncompromising environmentalist, and at the time, the owner of Grand Canyon Dories. He became Harriet's lifelong friend and mentor. As Martin rode the Colorado River, he would speak eloquently and often about the nature and the imperative of conservation. Sometimes he would get so wrapped up in what he was saying that he would forget what he was doing in the boat and they would flip. But going down the canyon in 1973 and going when I went, it's pretty much the same place. What I see is what Harriet saw, different times, different people, but the Grand Canyon is steadfastly there. Harriet saved housekeeping money for months to be able to afford the trip. She baked her own bread to save 3 cents per loaf. She purchased dry milk to save a few more pennies. She canceled the trash pickup, leaving it to her husband to haul their garbage to the dump. She painted the house herself so she wouldn't have to hire a professional painter. Eventually, she had enough for the 2 of them. The 2 of them were herself, of course, and her youngest daughter, Julie, to travel to the Grand Canyon and join one of Martin Litton's Dory adventures. The Grand Canyon changes people, not usually those who simply peer over the rim at its immensity for an hour or two, but those who go down into the heart of the canyon and feel its pulse. Those who are cut off from the amenities and distraction of civilization for days as they make their way through the mile-deep canyon on the Colorado River, especially those who go slowly and silently in oar-powered rafts or dories. Martin Litton believed that the most important thing is the majesty of the canyon and what it does to people's lives to be away from their normal routines for a while, even a short while. On our second day in the Grand Canyon, we left early in the morning under a cloudless blue sky, and we were in the dory that you see in the foreground there. It's called Dark Canyon. Martin Litton liked to name his dories after places that were either threatened or had been lost already. And we are going with the same boatman that we went on the first day, although that's unusual, because she has offered whoever was interested, and it turned out it was our whole group and that dory that day, that wanted to hop out and take photos as all the other dories went through a rapid called Hermit. So we get to Hermit, we hop out, we run to a good vantage point, and we see them going through Hermit. The eye-opening view from the shore is stupendous. Roger guides Perea into the crisscrossing waves. Perea surges up and dives down. It disappears behind a wall of water, then emerges on the other side. The stern of Duffy's Escalante is swamped, and it's the Escalante that you see in that photo. Its bow soars and shatters a wave into bits of sparkling crystal. Flying into another wave, only the bright yellow and white helmets worn by two of the passengers are visible. And as Russell pointed out to me the other day, there's actually a third one, the blue one, but it kind of blends in with the rocks. So we're going with the yellow and the white one. The dory is exuberantly alive, oblivious to its cargo of passengers and seemingly acting of its own volition. It is one with the river. As Martin Linton once said, it rides the waves beautifully. It has grace to it. As we continue on our trip in the Grand Canyon, day by day, moment by moment, the layers of civilization slip away. The separation from the rest of the world is total. No cell phones, no television, no automobiles, no obligations beyond the rules of the river and the daily routines. Sorry about that. The daily routines of departure and arrival as we move from camp to camp. All of the Grand Canyon is a lesson in geology. Geologists have been discovering their secrets there since the mid-19th century. One of the surveyors at that time described it as the most splendid exposure of stratified rocks that there is in the world. But one area remains a mystery: the Great Unconformity, a 1 to 2 billion year, geologists do not know the exact figure, gap in the history of the Earth. When we left our third camp at Big Dune, it was actually exactly that, a large expanse of sand. We were soon at Blacktail Canyon, one of the best places to see the Great Unconformity. Roger led us into the Great Unconformity over rock-strewn ground into a narrow, high-walled chasm. I wandered deeper into Blacktail Canyon, further into this eerie corridor that bends and twists its way through the mysteries of time. Hundreds of thin pancake layers of golden sandstone top a base of dark, rounded schist. Occasional dike intrusions interrupt the schists with jagged streaks of white and pink, where cracks have allowed molten rock to invade the ancient stone. I touched the walls of time before time. We are in lava country now. Swirling fan patterns of lava decorate the canyon walls. The slower it cooled, the darker the lava. Seeing the lava in 1869, John Wesley Powell wrote, "What a conflict of water and fire there must have been here. Just imagine a river of molten rock running down into a river of melted snow. What a seething and boiling of waters. What clouds of steam rolled into the heavens." About a mile upriver from Lava Falls, Vulcan's anvil protrudes 50 feet out of the river like an iron fist. And that's Vulcan's anvil in this photograph. And you can see the high water line because everything below it has been scoured by the river, the light colored tan and the black colored anvil. Vulcan's throne, a cinder cone volcano looming over Lava Falls on the north rim, is one of many volcanoes that spewed lava flows around and into the Grand Canyon within the past million years. Streams of lava solidified and formed dams as high as 1,500 feet in the area of Lava Falls, creating a lake that may have reached back as far as Lee's Ferry, and that's at about 180 miles. Eventually, the lake overflowed the dams and carved a path for the Colorado River, leaving Lava Falls as a daunting reminder of volcanic activity to test the skills of those who dare to run it. We are going to dare. Lava Falls is arguably the most difficult rapid on a river of difficult rapids. A 10 on the difficulty scale of 1 to 10, the Big Daddy, a combination of huge waves of granite and the chaos of Hermit. You may remember that Hermit was the one that we had photographs of earlier. In the 1950s, Martin Lytton always walked around and lined his boats through the rapid. By the time he was rowing dories in the 1960s, Martin had figured out how to run lava. And Martin was still running lava falls in one of his beloved dories at age 87. And by running it, I mean, he was the man with the oars at 87. Martin ran lava on Harriet's first trip through the Grand Canyon in 1973. All of the other passengers were going to walk around, including Harriet's daughter, Julie, but Harriet wanted to run the rapid. Martin said, "Sure, come with me." Harriet climbed into Martin's dory without telling Julie, who watched from the top of a nearby hill as the dory sliced into the rapid and flipped. Harriet tucked her head between her knees and wrapped her arms around her ankles. She took a deep breath and went through the rapid like a tennis ball in a washing machine. She ended up on the other side of the river, partway through Lava Rapid. The next boatman, a trainee rowing a raft, went after the dory, tied it to his leg, and pulled it out of the rapid. The dory's paint was scratched where Harriet had tried to hang on. The next boatman cut out of the rapid to retrieve Harriet, then finished his run through lava. Afterward, Harriet told everyone it was the most exhilarating experience I ever had in my life. So we're about to have our version of the exhilarating experience. There we are. We are in Perea with Roger. And Russell had had the foresight a few days before to talk to Roger and ask if we could go with him because he'd been down the river 178 times. And Russell figured that as a veteran, he would be the best guy to take us through this crazy rapid. And off we go. Through the rapid in 14 seconds, and we made it. All smiles. It was quite an adventure. And at the end, Roger gave each of the women a necklace of clay beads that he had fired from the sediment of the Colorado River. And I sense, as we're leaving all of the rocks of the Grand Canyon around my neck, carrying the magical power of the canyon and its river that pulled Harriet back again and again. And these are my rocks right there. So in my book, I alternate this story of our trip, our adventure in the Grand Canyon, with a story of Harriet's early life and 5 of her most significant and representative conservation achievements as founder president of the American Land Conservancy. I start with Lower Topanga Canyon. Lower Topanga Canyon is very close to Malibu. If you want to kind of orient yourself, it's down in Southern California. So its preservation meant that there was this open space available for the millions of people who live in the Los Angeles area. Saving Lower Topanga Canyon was so important to Harriet that she left the Trust for Public Land, where she had been for 12 years and where she had played a key role in many significant conservation projects, including the protection of the Columbia River Gorge on the border between Oregon and Washington. She left all that behind to start the American Land Conservancy so that she could save Lower Topanga Canyon. Working for TPL, they didn't feel at the time that they had the resources to do it, and that she felt that it was something that had to be done. And as soon as she left TPL, she started working on it. Her first go was not successful, but she didn't forget Topanga Canyon. As she wrote to Eldon Hughes in 1997, Eldon Hughes was a Southern Californian environmentalist. "Please rest assured that I have not forgotten Lower Topanga Canyon. That is one of my life projects that I am determined to finish." And finish it she did. It was quite a challenge, but it was closed in 2001. And when Russell and I hiked through Lower Topanga Canyon in 2016, no boundary line marked our passage from Topanga State Park before and Topanga State Park after Harriet engineered the addition of 1,659 acres, but I guesstimated its location from maps. My guesstimate coincidentally put it at the point on our hike where I stopped seeing houses. I imagined similar houses spilling down the sides of the canyon all the way to the beach, but for Harriet's intervention. Here we're getting close to the end of the ridge trail that we've been following, and that's Russell in the waving there. And as we got to the end of that road, we reached Parker Mesa Overlook, 1,525 feet above the Pacific Ocean. We sat on a bench and absorbed the view. All of Los Angeles and beyond spread out in front of us. The towering office buildings of Century City and downtown LA, a helicopter rumbling overhead, an airplane taking off from LAX, the curving beaches, the snow-capped mountains, the canyon ravines, the houses, the ocean sliding into the far horizon, the urban and the wild, side by side. Early on in the work that ALC did was a very complex and difficult but rewarding project, the Nevada Land Exchange. It prevented the construction of a ski resort on the slopes of Mount Rose. Russell, Michael, and I hiked up Mount Rose, which is about 11,000 feet at its peak, just before our Grand Canyon trip. And this is one of the views as you're going up Mount Rose. I went up rather quickly and realized when I was not quite at the top that I couldn't go any farther. But Michael went the whole way. When he reached the summit, he saw spectacular views of Lake Tahoe to the southwest, Mount Lassen to the north, and Reno to the northeast. He did not see the Galena Resort the developers almost built in the southeastern side of Mount Rose because it's not there. And that's where it would have been if the resort had gone ahead. And it's not there because Harriet put together a land exchange that traded scattered lots in the city of Las Vegas for pristine forests and meadows and the Carson Range of the Sierra Nevada. It was a big deal. We're celebrating, and there was a celebration in a Galena meadow. There's Harriet speaking at that celebration on the left, and on the right is the saw that she was given that day. And that saw was on the wall of her office from that time until she retired. It was quite an achievement. Another project of Harriet's, small, but very important to her, was John Muir's Gravesite. It's in Martinez, and it was eventually added to the John Muir National Historic Site. More than 100 years gone, John Muir remains a fixture in the conservation pantheon. Places he loved have been named after him: John Muir Woods and Muir Beach in Marin County, the 211-mile John Muir Trail in the Southern Sierra that passes through the John Muir Wilderness, which includes Mount Muir and Muir Glacier in Alaska. 2 species of aster, a rose, a wren, a pika, a butterfly, and a millipede bear his name. The Sierra Club, the environmental organization Muir co-founded and served as its first president until his death, named its highest award after him. Muir's image has been inscribed on 2 US stamps and on a California state quarter. The California Historical Society named Muir the greatest Californian. The California legislature designated April 21st of every year as John Muir Day, and Muir was among the first inductees into the California Hall of Fame. Yet his gravesite, hidden among small ranch houses at the end of a narrow lane, lay neglected and largely forgotten by the late 1950s. When Harriet first started working on the project, the cemetery was surrounded by much less a fence that was very ugly and had razor wire along the top. So one of the things that she did was to replace the fence with the wrought iron fence you see there. When death called John Muir on Christmas Eve, 1914, his family buried him next to his wife, Louise Strensel Muir, and a small cemetery at the base of the hills where Muir loved to walk, and about a mile south of the Muir homestead. Death called the man, but his spirit remains. It pervades the place where he lived and worked and was buried. A place to reflect on the life and legacy of John Muir, a man who made the most of his moment. A place where visitors may react much as Muir did when he laid flowers on the graves of Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau in 1893. Reflecting on his visit, Muir wrote in a letter to his wife, "I did not imagine I would be so moved at the sight of the resting places of these grand men as I found I was." A place that Harriet chose to save because it was the right thing to do. Harriet often bet the farm, as she liked to say, about her approach to risky projects. And she nearly lost her bet on the Thunderbird Lodge. It's on the shores of Lake Tahoe. After many close calls, she did make it happen. Just down the mountain from Galena, and not long after the celebration of its preservation, Harriet discovered a stretch of Lake Tahoe coastline that amazed and delighted her. She had conveyed a lot of land around Lake Tahoe into public ownership, so she really thought she knew the lake, but nobody had ever told her about the Thunderbird Lodge and the 140 acres that surround it. When Harriet saw the property for the first time in April 1995, she believed she had found the most beautiful spot on the lake. The property provides panoramic views of the whole lake. You can see all the way down to the south shore and in the opposite direction to Incline. And it's that opposite direction she mentions that is in this particular photograph. Harriet later told a Reno Gazette-Journal reporter, "I knew instantly. What a gem. Wait till you see it." So we'll take a quick look here at what you saw. Well, as I said, it was a tough deal to achieve. And part of the many things that went into getting it done, there was a fundraiser at the Thunderbird Lodge itself, and two of her very long-time loyal supporters were present. And that's Martin Litton, whom I've mentioned several times on the left, and David Brower on the right, who was executive director of the Sierra Club for many years and went on to found his own organizations for conservation. Harriet and ALC had saved nearly 1 mile of Lake Tahoe shoreline and 140 acres of adjacent land for the public's enjoyment in perpetuity. The erstwhile Dreyfus estate, it was owned by Jack Dreyfus, the financier, with its spectacular views of Lake Tahoe, now welcomes visitors. And if you would like to go, you just need to go to the website for the Thunderbird Lodge Preservation Society. They're the ones who have charge of all of that. And you can get tickets and take a van ride down to the lodge and property and see the views for yourself. The surrounding acres are available to hikers. They are managed by the U.S. Forest Service. Like the wide open vistas along the Mount Rose Highway to the north and the breathtaking beauty of Hope Valley to the south, Thunderbird Lodge joined the long list of projects Harriet spearheaded to preserve magnificent landscapes for posterity. There's a photo of the lodge, part of the lodge itself. The Hearst Ranch was Harriet's last project, a project called one of the biggest and most complex land conservation deals in the nation's history by the New York Times. And CRT holds the conservation easement on Hearst Ranch. In 1917, William Randolph Hearst had this to say about the ranch. "I love this ranch. It is wonderful. I love the sea and I love the mountains and the hollows and the hills and the shady places and the creeks and the fine old oaks and even the hot brushy hillsides full of quail and the canyons full of deer. It is a wonderful place. I would rather spend a month at the ranch than any place in the world." Not far from the entrance to Hearst Castle, about a mile north on Highway 1 and directly across from Old San Simeon Village, Russell and I turned right onto the road that leads to Hearst Ranch. As we pulled up to the closed gate flanked by stone walls, I saw a long-standing sign that confirmed our arrival at Piedra Blanca Rancho, the name first given to the ranch because of the large rocks bleached white by seabird guano lining the nearby shoreline of San Simeon Bay. Crafted with cutouts of cattle, trees, and a cowboy riding the range, the open wrought iron sign framed a view of the rolling golden hills. They were golden when I saw it the first time, the green in the photo, of the ranch that the Hearst family has called home for 7 generations. The ranch covers more than 82,000 acres. That's about 128 square miles, 5 times the size of Manhattan, 2.5 times the size of the city and county of San Francisco, bigger than all of Sacramento. It has always been a cattle ranch, using the same methods for producing grass-fed beef for more than 150 years. But the Hearst Ranch is much more than a cattle raising operation. Stretching inland, 13 miles east from the rugged coastline over the Santa Lucia Mountains to Lake Nacimiento, and 18 miles south to Pico Cove from the northern border at the Monterey County line, the ranch is a scenic wonderland, boasting extraordinary natural resources and abundant habitat, fostered by the stewardship of one family for 1.5 centuries. Its biological diversity is an environmentalist dream. On that day of our visit, we parked our car and got into Cliff Garrison's truck. He was the ranch manager at that time, for a tour of the ranch that Stephen T. Hearst, William Randolph Hearst's great-grandson, had asked Harriet and ALC in partnership with the California Rangeland Trust to help him preserve forever. When Steve Hearst had first gotten involved with the real estate of the company in November 1998, he didn't want to go the way of development. There have been several tries in the past to develop the ranch, and they have not succeeded. Steve had grown up vacationing there on land that was little changed from the time George Hearst first laid eyes on it in the 1860s. Family picnics, horseback rides, and hunting trips all contributed to making him intimately familiar with the ranch that he has called my favorite place on the planet. When ALC and the California Rangeland Trust presented a joint proposal for Steve's Hearst consideration, they said, ALC and CRT share the philosophy that landowners should be fairly compensated for their property rights, and that conservation easements, to work successfully over the long term, must allow the landowner flexibility to remain profitable while at the same time protecting the resources. We believe the partnership of ALC and CRT offers the best opportunity to meet the financial and ownership objectives for the Hearst Ranch while preserving the unique resources of the ranch in an environmentally responsible manner. Once ALC and CRT were chosen as conservation partners for the Hearst Ranch, Steve said, "We selected Harriet because she wasn't like the rest." ALC set itself apart because of its win-win attitude and making a bridge between conservation and the property owner. Harriet said, "The Hearst Ranch is one of this country's rare jewels and represents an important conservation project for not only the American Land Conservancy, but for the state. Our goal is to protect the beauty of the ranch for all generations." And it took a lot of hard work to achieve that goal. But finally, it was time to close the deal. Harriet Burgess, Steve Hearst, and Nita Vale gathered at the office of Russell Austin's law firm in Sacramento to sign documents on February 10, 2005. 3 cameras clicked to preserve the moment. Their smiles say it all: satisfaction, exultation, and perhaps a little bit of, I can't believe we did it. They had done it. One of the biggest and most complex land conservation deals in the nation's history. Driving All-American Highway 1 north from Cambria in May 2017, Russell and I left the motels of San Simeon Acres behind as we crossed San Simeon Creek and entered the realm of Hearst Ranch. The rocky coast west of the highway includes 1,500 acres that Hearst donated to the state of California, 30 beaches, and 18 miles of coastline, 18 miles added to the California Coastal Trail, room for realignment of the highway to reduce erosion. Waves rose from the blue-green Pacific Ocean and spread over sandy beaches. Hordes of elephant seals sunbathed. Hikers and windsurfers took advantage of the clear, windy day with its blue skies that subsided to a white glow at the horizon. The California coast, undeveloped and glorious, as perhaps no other place on earth can be. Still, I felt an undeniable affinity for that rolling green hills spreading up from the coast to meet the Santa Lucia Mountains, the hills that we navigated in Cliff Garrison's truck 6 years before. Thousands and thousands of acres preserved as a working ranch and harboring an extraordinary biological diversity, all monitored regularly by CRT to ensure compliance with the terms of the conservation easement that protects the ranch forever. Harriet and ALC saved over 200,000 acres of land, including many other ranches, the Burdell Ranch, East West Ranch, Molinari Ranch, and Garner Ranch, to name a few. As Harriet said, the land we save is our legacy. It's what we give to our children. To conclude, I'd like to do something that Harriet always did. Thank all the people involved, all the people who made my book and this event possible. There are two people without whom, of course, there would have been no book: Harriet herself and my husband, Russell Austin. I would like to thank Harriet's family, especially her daughter, Leslie, who did so much to save and give me access to ALC files and who was always there with cheerful and generous support. There are many others who gave me their time and their memories, and you'll find them all in the book. I also owe a huge thank you to Ray Viron, poet and writing coach extraordinaire. And a big thank you to two women who have been so helpful in getting the word out about my book, Lori Hawk at Murphy Austin and Sarah Barkoway at Fulcrum Property. Finally, thanks very much to our dear friend Al Jahns for hosting this event, and to the California Rangeland Trust for the work that they do to conserve ranches in California, and for inviting me to share Harriet's story with you tonight. Thanks, everybody. And that's—
Wow, Elizabeth, thank you. That was incredible. And I don't know if you've been able to see the chat as it's been going along, but people are clapping out loud and thanking you. People are saying that it's giving them chills, that it was amazing. We've had some really interesting comments from people who also knew and worked with Harriet. So that was really, thank you so very, very much. If we were able to, you would hear thunderous applause.
Thank you, thank you.
But folks, please, if you have questions for Elizabeth, as I said at the beginning, unfortunately, Zoom makes it very difficult to do it verbally. So the best way to do it is at the bottom of your screen, right next to the chat, you can type into the Q&A and we will pass along questions. We have a few that have come in. And one of them Al alluded to at the beginning, Elizabeth, and I'm curious, did the Grand Canyon trip idea precede your writing of it, or did you know you were going to write a book about Harriet and then and decided that the Grand Canyon trip was how you needed to immerse yourself in the research? Chicken or the egg here?
Well, what happened was when I found out, and one of my early interviews with Leslie made it clear that the Grand Canyon was a key to Harriet, to her inspiration, to her conservation mission. And because she didn't write herself, she was not a writer, she didn't leave a diary or journal or anything that could give me insight into her thoughts and emotions, I thought, well, I should go to the Grand Canyon because it was so important to her. And so off we went. And I hadn't planned to write about the Grand Canyon, but Ray told me that I could get a waterproof journal. And I didn't want to keep notes on it so that I would, have sort of my impressions. So I kept a lot of notes as I went through. When I got back, I wrote some pieces about it, but I still didn't have any plans to include it in the book. But as I thought about it more and more, and as these pieces were written, I thought it might work out very well to intersperse them so that you would be able to experience what, as close as I could get to what Harriet was experiencing when she went through the Grand Canyon, and also see what that led to by discussing her projects. So it was not a first thing, but it did happen.
Well, I for one, it's a really great literary tool you use there, because it does really, and I like how you even called them interludes, and it really makes the book, as Al alluded earlier, it's a fascinating and wonderful read.
I have the benefit of a microphone and want to interject a question here that I hope doesn't put you on the spot too much, Elizabeth. But as your book documents, you poured through a mountain of transactions. And I'm wondering, you obviously selected a jewel box of them, but I'm wondering, as you were composing your manuscript, what transaction that you had reviewed did you find the most difficult to leave on the so-called cutting room floor?
That is a good question. And I sort of snuck around it by including little bits about some of the other projects like Bear Valley and East-West Ranch, which were very interesting to me, by having them get at least a little bit of attention in the other chapters. So I think I managed to squeeze in all the ones that I really wanted to have there. I'd have to go back and look at them all to see which ones I think, oh my gosh, I wish I did have put that one in. My goal, of course, as I mentioned, was to try and there's a land exchange, and there's conservation easement, and there's Harriet hanging in there for years and years and years before it happens. Things that I hope would bring the character of her work to the fore. So I don't know if I could pick one that I'd say, absolutely, I wish I could have put in. There are a number that would have been helpful to do. And again, I also got around that by in the appendix, I list all of her projects, and I give a quick summary of a lot of them there, so that hopefully not too much has been left out. 360 projects ALC did, so there are quite a few to pick from. And besides that, I talked to you and Russell to get an insight into what you thought were the most representative projects as well. So I called on my experts.
Well, I've got to say that it was a trip down memory lane reading through the notes and the appendices.
Elizabeth, now the questions are pouring in. First of all, I do need to tell you, I'm going to call attention to one person who typed into the chat box here that Julia Walsh, Harriet's daughter, says, "Thank you, Betsy. You truly captured my mother's spirit and determination in your book." So, Julia, thank you for joining us tonight. And it's even better to know that you like the book as much as we do. Another question from Angelo is he says, "We see wealthy people doing amazing things like funding trips to space and explorations to Mars, but I'm wondering if are you aware of any high profile folks doing very large projects here on Earth to save this planet?"
I have to say that's outside my scope of knowledge. How about Al or Russell or anybody else know about? Probably CRT is you guys are probably the best position to talk about the big projects that are going on right now. Can I get some help from y'all?
Well, I would think it's worth noting in this context that there was an extraordinarily large contribution component to the Hearst Ranch transaction. That it wasn't simply a purchased easement. There were in excess of $200 million of contributed dollars to that transaction.
That's fantastic. That's great.
But it would be nice to be able to divert some of the money going into the Club of Space Exploration.
Indeed. Indeed.
Preserve the earth that we have.
Yep.
Another generous funder of some of ALC's efforts, particularly in Alaska, was the Paul Allen Foundation, who some may remember from Microsoft fame.
Yeah. Another question, this one pertaining more to the Grand Canyon trip. Nancy wants to know if you can give us a description of what it's like to be in the boat going down Lava Rocks Rapids.
It happens really quickly. You're there, as I say, it's about a 14-second ride, and you are instructed in the very beginning to high side so that you can try and balance the waves hitting and so forth. You don't have time to do that in lava. It goes by very quickly, up, down, up, down. You can't see a lot because the water's splashing all over the place. So that's lava. Some of the rapids aren't nearly as exciting as that. So you have a little more time to enjoy the ride. For one of the rapids, the boatman told Michael to go sit up on the prow. So he was like a figurehead up at the front there going through, while I was sitting in the back going, oh, please don't fall off. So the rapids themselves are exciting and wet. You get really wet. When we had one day where I don't know if you're familiar with rain pants that you have for hiking. So I've been getting really wet and it was cloudy and I thought, maybe I'll put those on. I won't get quite so wet. And I discovered that rain pants are not rapid pants. Didn't help. Gore-Tex didn't matter. So it's a great experience. And in a dory, I think, although I haven't done rafts in a long time, you get much more of an up and down feeling as you go through the rapid than you do in a raft, which I think floats a little bit more over the top.
Was it abject terror or is it just quick excitement?
It's funny. I don't think of it as being a terrifying experience. I probably should have. We had to put helmets on for the particularly difficult rapids. And we always had life jackets on. And I guess it was just the optimist in me. Of course, we're not going to flip. Although one of the boatmen had flipped the previous trip through. So it certainly does happen, and it happens to the most experienced. And I said with Martin, he tended to get a little distracted. So he often kind of, went off somewhere. But I don't know. I don't think you get that feeling in the pit of your stomach sometimes when you're like really afraid. That never really happened. It's like, okay, we're doing this. And you could hear it. It announced itself, the roar of the rapids, and then you went into it. And I think that coupled with the confidence in the boatmen that we were with, the members of one family have been involved with rowing through the canyon for a long time. Roger's one, and Duffy is another, and his wife. So three of them were related. I may be forgetting one that was related. But there are a lot in that family. So it's a confidence in who you're going with. I know there's been a lot more terrifying results when people have gone on their own in private trips.
Sure. And
they don't know what they're doing. I meant to say when we were looking at the scouting lava that lava changes all the time. And so they have to get out, the folks who've been through it a lot of times, and check it out to make sure they know the right route through. So if you're going through it for the very first time and you've never ever done it, it can be harrowing and fatal. So go with the good folks. They know what they're doing.
Another question was, obviously Russell worked closely with Harriet for years, and you obviously got to know her. Had you begun writing on the book before her passing?
I had begun working on it in 2008, and Harriet died in 2010. So yes, at that point, Alzheimer's was playing a significant role in her ability to remember, but she had done an oral history in 2006 where it hadn't been as much of a factor, with someone else, not with me. So that was helpful. But I certainly knew her before that happened, and we stayed from time to time at their house and did things like go to Diana Krall concert and stuff like that. So yes, I did know her, not nearly as well, of course, as Russell. In the beginning, I knew her mostly as the voice on the phone at 6 o'clock in the morning. I need to talk to Russell. So yeah, that was my introduction to Harriet.
I guess her daughter Linda has also joined us tonight and said Mom would be so proud. So and I'm realizing next time we probably need to do this again, maybe as a actual moderated panel with the family. But a question maybe you can answer is, Shannon, my colleague Shannon, pulled out the quote that when she was talking about Thunderbird Lodge, Harriet said, "It seems that nothing I work on is a slam dunk." What do you think kept her going? She was this I only know her from reading the book, and she was clearly a force of nature herself. But what kept her going? She banged her head against some walls here.
Oh, yeah.
And kept coming back for more. And Al, I'd ask you to answer it as well if you have insights into this.
I think it's that passion that she had for conservation that really was set afire by Martin Litton, carried her through. That when it's gone, it's gone. You've got to save it now, or it's going to be gone, and you won't ever have a chance to save it again. And that dedication and the energy, just amazing. I mean, she would run out, take the red eye to Washington, D.C., and get there, take a quick shower, and spend 10 hours straight running from meeting to meeting. Just an amazing, amazing woman.
Yeah, it comes through in the book. I would have liked to have met her. She sounds like she was quite a treat.
Yes, I'm glad I had the chance, and I wish I had more opportunities when she was still alive.
But I'd like to just comment that I think that Elizabeth has well captured the reality that Harriet had a much greater appetite for risk in all facets of her life than most human beings.
This is true. She would fly with Martin Litton, and I think that is an indicator of how daring she was, because Martin was a pretty wild pilot. He piloted gliders in World War II, Market Garden, and he would fly his plane in the early days. He would fly his plane down into the Grand Canyon and drop supplies to his oarsmen that were down in the canyon. I mean, he was pretty wild, and she would fly with him, and the plane didn't always work the way it was supposed to. So we had a few exciting experiences with the plane.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
A few more fun questions. One is, are you working on a new book, and can you give us a preview?
I'm still searching for the perfect project. There's, it's an interesting process, because I think about what I'd like to do, and then you have to see whether there's enough to be able to do that. So at this moment, I don't have anything firmly enough to articulate it at this stage of the game.
Okay.
But there will be, I hope, another book one day.
Okay.
It took 10 years for this one to be finished from start to finish. I started in 2008. I had to take a couple of years off because of various other things. By the time it was finished, it had been 10 years. And with Ray's help, because we worked the last year and a half or 2 years, I guess, I would write and I would send it to her. So I had somebody reading, which was really good motivator. Somebody was actually going to read it if I wrote it. So it was a long process, but I learned a lot this time around. The first one was a little easier because it was a little more straightforward and I had a deadline. So this time I didn't have a deadline.
Okay, thank you. And since you've mentioned Russell and his involvement, how is Russell as an editor?
Russell was a reader, and he would make occasional suggestions, and I could choose to ignore them or accept them. I was particularly interested in his, if I had made an error of fact, that was very helpful. But hey, he would come down, he would say, it was brilliant, or it's, so what more can you ask from an editor, right? Brilliant, right?
I love it.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
it.
Yeah, he was a good supporter, absolutely.
And then who do you admire as an author? What about them gets your attention?
I read a lot. So I'll just mention some of the ones sort of in the area that we've been talking about. John McPhee is fabulous. He wrote a book called Encounters with the Archdruid, among many others. And that one is taking David Brower to sort of meet his enemies. It's fascinating. Robert Macfarlane is a British author who's recently written something called Underland, and my favorite is Landmarks. He's goes into places, I guess, is the best way to put that. And Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass is another wonderful book that I enjoyed in the last year or so. And if you're into historical fiction, which I kind of enjoy, Dorothy Dunnett is wonderful. I've probably read her books several times.
That's fantastic.
Elizabeth, how does one get a hold of your book? Where will we find it?
Well, if you have my screen up, you can see the website, elizabethaustinauthor.com. And if you go there, there'll be links to where you can buy it, but it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and hey, Point Reyes Books has it, which is, I love that little bookstore. So you can order it however you prefer. It is out there. Please do. For one thing, a portion of the proceeds from the sale of the book are donated to California Rangeland Trust.
And we are so grateful for that. Thank you for thinking of us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Are there any other questions we didn't get to? Paula, I do see your question about conservation easements. I'm going to refer that one to Michael when we go back to Michael here. I think he can talk better to that. Are there any other questions for Elizabeth? Type them into the chat or to the Q&A here, and we'll take one more second. Okay, looks like we're set. Elizabeth, thank you so much. That was truly, truly fantastic. We appreciate it. And as I said, there's thunderous applause in the chat section right now. And so if that's all the questions, I'm going to turn it back to Michael Delbar. Michael, just for a few, if you have some final comments you wanted to make, and if we have any questions for Michael, and I already have one for you, Michael. So you want me to ask the question first, or you want to make your comments first?
Oh, go for it.
Okay. Paula is asking a question about conservation easements and asks, is one of the goals of a conservation easement the maintenance of the ranch or farming use? You want to talk to that?
I would love to, and it definitely is. The landowner typically wants to protect that ranch for the way it is today for the future. And that means not just the agricultural production, but the open space, the wildlife habitat, everything that provides those environmental benefits that we talked about earlier. So it is to maintain that in its agricultural production.
Excellent. Any final comments from you, Michael, since this is your CEO speaker series?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. And Elizabeth, wow. Thank you for such an insight into an amazing experience and an awesome person and accomplishments of Harriet Burgess, for which we are all truly grateful. As you can see tonight, the partnership between the Rangeland Trust, the American Land Conservancy, Harriet, and the Hearst Ranch was such a vital partnership that accomplished the permanent conservation of such a large, important, and of course, absolutely stunningly beautiful part of the Central Coast. American Land Conservancy and Harriet were also critical partners in 2 other conserved ranches that are in the Rangeland Trust portfolio: the Bear Valley Ranch in Colusa County and the Centennial Ranch in Mono County. Also, I want to let you all know that the continued success of the California Rangeland Trust frankly depends on support from friends like you. And your investment in our work means so much. And remember, as we mentioned earlier, for every dollar invested in the Rangeland Trust returns $3.50 in value, a 350% return on investment. Angela's question earlier asked about, are there any large or important projects that are being conserved? We consider all of our projects important, each and every one of them. It means so much to those landowners, to the people who see that every day, to the lives impacted, to the wildlife that call it home. It's all important to all of us. But in order for us to accomplish that conservation goal, we need your help. And remember that investment, even though it monetarily is 350% return, a lot of us consider that priceless. So thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you again, Elizabeth, for an amazing evening. Al, you as well as in hosting this. And Steve, thank you all. Thank you everybody for being here. And hopefully next time we can do this in person.
Exactly.
That would be great.
So just before we close, a couple reminders. One, if you would like to purchase Elizabeth's book, the best way to do it is by going to elizabethaustinauthor.com. As Michael mentioned, your support means the world to us. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you to please support the work we're doing so we can continue to save these precious ranches like the Hearst Ranch, like Bear Valley. And if you'd like to make a gift to the Rangeland Trust, you can do so at www.rangelandtrust.org. If you forget that, we will send it to you in a follow-up email here in a couple of days. But again, it's www.rangelandtrust.org. And then finally, just one final thing for everybody. I know a lot of you are CRT fans and friends. If you haven't heard, tickets and tables are now on sale for our annual Western Affair Gala. We had to cancel it last year due to COVID, but it is back on. It will be held on October 2nd in Rancho Mission Viejo, the last of the great ranches in Orange County here in Southern California. So you can purchase your tickets at rangelandtrust.org as well. With a year off, we have a whole lot to celebrate. It's going to be one of the biggest and best yet, and we would love to have you all join us for that. But for now, thank you all for attending. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Elizabeth, thank you, thank you, thank you. It was amazing. Really, I'm so sorry I never got a chance to meet Harriet because you captured her wonderfully and the work she did. And Al, thank you so much for agreeing to host. We appreciate that. And it was lovely, the tie-in of your knowledge of the work. So thank you both so much for a wonderful evening. And I'll let the rest of you all enjoy the rest of your night. And hopefully, as Michael said, we can do this again next time in person. So thank you all, and we'll sign off for now.